Hello and welcome back to Up the Villa. On today's episode, I'm going to go into a deep dive on how Unai Emery can currently fix Aston Villa. If you are new to the channel, make sure you are subscribing, smash the likes. Let's try and get around 500. If you are enjoying the content, make sure you are hitting that like button. And more importantly, comment your thoughts in the comment section down below, and we'll see what you guys are all saying as well. So, how does he fix Villa? Like, what's the issue with Villa at the minute? And we've got a few slight fundamental problems, haven't we? Which I think slight problems are meaning their patterns, they're happening time and time again, which needs to be addressed. So the biggest problem for me is something that I can see is it's all about distances between your winger, distances between your midfielders, how we get set into our attacking phases, how we move up the pitch, how we support the striker. And all collectively, it looks a little bit of a mismatch at the minute. And we're really struggling. We're struggling on transition. We're struggling defending on transition. We're making mental errors such as Bruges, such as the Pau and the Martinez. That's a mental error because it's just something that shouldn't happen. And I just think we need to reassess and get back on track. I spoke on my reaction about how I felt that the current system had slightly been found out, and I do stand by that the system has been found out slightly. And you have to be honest and say it has, because we play the same way every week. It's the same 4-4-2 formation. It's the same shadow striker dropping. It's the left back bombing on. All of these things make analysing Aston Villa a lot easier for the opposition. So I do think there needs to be a subtle tweak in what we do. I think in turn that could add protection, but it could also enhance us going forward into attacking areas as well. So if we take a little look at the performance against Chelsea, and we'll have a look at Aston Villa's average positions. And what you can see is, barring Ollie Watkins and slightly Jadon, every single Villa player is in its own half. Now, what that basically means to me is that Chelsea's system and formation is pushing Aston Villa into our own half. They're pressing us. They're not allowing us to get out, which is making it really difficult for Villa. And then if you start looking at the support that the strikers got, where are the midfielders going? Where's the left back going? Where's the balance of the team looking? Is it lopsided? So if we take a look at where the width of our left side should be, it's Luca Dean. And we can see that the ground that Luca Dean has to make up to get into an attacking area is really high. Now, we have had very, very good spells with this last season, getting into the Champions League. It worked an absolute treat. And what Unai alluded to in his after the game, he was basically saying that last season we weren't contenders, but now we are. So teams are setting up differently against us because they know that we are one of the contenders, which slightly makes a little bit of sense, in the sense of opposition teams are upping their game against Aston Villa. But then when we start to look at Jadon on the opposite side, the width is there, but the attacking output isn't really there when you're talking about really getting into the final third. And then we talk about the two players that are either side of the double pivot. John McGinn rarely venturing into the opposition half as in an attacking output. And then when we look at Morgan Rogers, exactly the same. There's not really an attacking output. There's not really an area where he's really penetrating. And then you go to the striker in Ollie Watkins, and his touches are being limited because he's not really feeding off many through balls. When he is, he's missing his chances. His touches are sparse. So in turn, the attacking output, it's not really there. There's not really a player currently who's got the output, who's got the position, who's got the space, the time, the ability to cause a lot of damage. So then the double pivot is doing its job, really, I guess. They're not really going to move to attacking areas. You maybe see a Tielemans do that. And we've got Pau, Konsa, and Matty Cash. Matty Cash's role is to stay back and not get too far forward because Philogene offers the width on the right-hand side. So if we go to the tactical pad and what we can see. Now, I've got a lineup here now. You can take people out, you can put people in various positions. But for me, when I look at Villa at the minute, and we look at where we're trying to build to, so Rodgers will come central if he's playing on the left. You could have Tielemans off Watkins, drop in to make a box midfield. Bailey offers the width. Konsa, Carlos, Pau, Kamara screening. Maatsen or Digne are the one that have to offer that width on that left-hand side. And then you start to get a front five. And this is Villa in an ideal scenario. Now, when I go and look at some other teams in the Premier League, in the way in which they build with a front five, if we take a look at Arsenal first. So we'll go to Arsenal and we'll have a look at how Arsenal are building within their formation. And this was their last game against West Ham. So we've got a back 2/3. So you've got Jorginho holding, you've got Gabriel, and you've got Saliba. Declan Rice is going more into a central midfield position. We've got Calafiori. And then we've really got this front five of Trossard. We've got Havertz, Odegaard. We've got Saka. And you've got Timber offering that width as well. Theirs varies depending on personnel. We go to Chelsea against West Ham early on in the season. What you can see from their formation is that a back three with left back going into central midfield with Enzo and Caicedo, and a front four of Sancho with the width on the left, Madueke with the width on the right, with Palmer and Jackson up top. Now, when Aston Villa signed Ian Maatsen, I remember doing some tactical analysis episodes talking about how he was going to play for Aston Villa. And one of the big things about Maatsen was his ability to go into central midfield. Now, if we take a look at Ian Maatsen for Dortmund last season, and we take a look at his average positions and his heat map over the course of the whole season, what you'll see is that Maatsen's heat map showed him playing in a central midfield position from left back. You can see that his heat map really goes quite far into the halfway line and actually past the halfway line point into the right-hand side. He's got width. He's going forward. He's offering width on the left. But it's a central defensive midfield position, but also an attacking midfield position as well. What I think this would allow Aston Villa to do, and I'm really surprised we haven't done this yet, is it would add so much more protection to our defensive unit, but also allow us to unlock the attacking positions with more width completely. So what I mean by that is, if we've got, for example, Maatsen playing left back. So Maatsen's in left back. Our team's having to get sort of set into its shape. We want a quick little transition. The ball could go into Onana here. And then boom, a ball that goes over the top. And Maatsen's got to run all the way down here to offer the width. That's fine. But the distance that he's got to cover is a lot. And as we saw against Chelsea, on the average positions for Chelsea, Luca Dean's average position was about here, and his distance to get anywhere into, for example, this zone here, that zone there's a lot of ground he's got to make up. If he makes up that ground, that's fine. But if he gets caught, we've got a bit of a problem. My option and my scenario of how I think this could work and how we can adapt slightly would be to do this. Play a back three of Pau, Carlos and Konsa, because we don't need the right back to offer the width. Because it doesn't make sense to me. When we play Cash, we get that little bit of a link up with Bailey, and that's fine, and that looks better. But we don't need the right back to venture down here because we're leaving too much space. The width has to come from the wide right player. That's where Aston Villa's width comes from. But you'd want the same from the opposite side. Otherwise, it becomes very lopsided. And the distance to get that width from there to there is a lot. So while we're building, and if we're losing the ball on transition, and if we are getting caught and we can't get into an attacking area quick enough, then the whole attack is sort of lopsided, breaking down, not quite working. Here's my option of what we can do to tweak it slightly. Rodgers or a wide left player stays wide left and stays on the touchline and plays in that position exactly the same as what Leon Bailey does. We have a front two. So Watkins stays exactly the same. Tielemans, exactly the same as the Rodgers role. Helps support, moves in and around this area. Onana can move slightly further forward. And Maatsen can drift into that midfield area there. Now, what this enables us to do is it enables us to have a 3-2-5 formation, which is exactly the same as what we do currently play, but you've got slightly more protection there because the distance between Maatsen from midfield to left back isn't as far as if he's over here and we're getting caught out through there as well. So I really think we could try a subtle change to the system where Maatsen inverts slightly, and whether it's Onana or whether it's Tielemans or whether this could be McGinn through here, for example. But I really think what you'd get from this is you'd get the powerhouse of Onana, who can play a little bit further forward, who can drive forward. He'd have more license because he knows he's got cover from Maatsen. We've got the width that just stays out wide on the left. We don't have to worry about having to get into the position to get the width. The width is already there, exactly like the right-hand side. And if we need to work ourselves on transition, Onana can just drop a little bit. He can drop. Everybody sits in a little bit more. And then basically, you've got your 4-4-2 shape. Within this formation, we're still defending an out of possession 4-4-2 formation, which is exactly the same as what we're doing now. But it's a subtle tweak that for me would allow us to build a little bit easier. And it allows us to get into areas where we can do more damage. We can still have Rodgers if some games we need a player that can just drop a little bit like that. We've still got all of this protection through there as well. And it's a subtle tweak, and it's something for me that would solve the problem of what we had against Chelsea when the distances were like this. Because there's nobody getting into an attacking area on that left-hand side whatsoever. And I just think it would balance it out so much more for us. And I think it would solve quite a lot. So for me, that's a tactical solution that I think could work. Because it's not like I'm a nutty professor coming up with something that is so like obscure that's never been done before. Maatsen is super comfortable playing in this position. When I started thinking about this, I started thinking about Ian Maatsen, and I came across a guy that had done an article on this. If I can find it quickly, I'll show. Okay, I found it. So I found it. So I started thinking about it, and then I came across this article, and I thought, do you know what? It just backs up everything that I'm saying. So it's from Total Football Analysis, and what it does is it breaks down Maatsen's positioning for Borussia Dortmund. So what you can see is they're building with a back three. They've got Maatsen that's gone into central midfield. And I just think it would enable us. Again, you can see his heat map here. That you can see. What's he doing there? You can see that he can get into the attacking area as well. So the threat is there. And, you know, when I was watching him, when we were signing him, and he was picking up the ball in this position, he's playing these cross-field balls. And he was playing these cross-field balls. He was getting into attacking areas. You know, even if Maatsen decides to go further forward and he wants to attack a little bit, what you would have is that you would just have a central midfielder that recognizes the danger. So if he goes into this area, you just have a central midfielder that just covers the ground and just shuffles across a little bit, and he can get into that space through there. So for me, that's something. It's an idea, and it's something that I think we could look at, we could work at, and I think it would really offer something completely different, but a subtle change. In possession, we'd be better. Out of possession, we'd be exactly the same. So that's my little idea. Now, the next topic that we can really talk about is the striker situation. So I think we can all see that Watkins, what he offers for the team, pressing, goal scoring over his time under Emery is fantastic. But the question I'll ask you guys is, when is it time to play John Duran? And that is the question. When is it time to play? You could even play them together, but just switch them round slightly. So back to the tactical pad. I'm just talking off the top of my head now. Right, so take Tielemans. Maybe Onana might not be back ready. So you go with this, right? But make Watkins the one that drops slightly because he's got more pace. So you've kind of got the Diaby role with Watkins through there. But the out-and-out number 9 is John Duran. He's the one you try and hit. He's the one that you play the long balls to. He's the one that's got the hold-up, that can drop. Watkins can run off. That's something that I think we could try and implement as well. Because whenever I feel like Duran's on, I feel like that's the setup. I would go for the opposite and go Duran as the number 9, Watkins as the player off. And you can still press the same, hopefully. But the link up and the understanding and what they're meant to do are slightly changed as well. And I think Emery just needs to... What I feel like's happened, and this is what I personally feel like has happened with Emery. I think, forget the first year he came in, because we played totally different. We defended a lot. We sat deep. We soaked it up. We won games 1-0. We're not that team anymore. Emery wants Villa to play like Arsenal, Man City, and have all of the control. Have 3 players at the back. and build with a front five. That's what he wants. And I think what's happened by doing that is he's so focused on what we do and just our general patterns of play that he's kind of lost the game to game subtle tweaks of counteracting opposition, attacking key areas within the opposition. I feel like at the minute it's a bit, we go out and we play the same way, we do the same things, and we do what we do. We won't change what we do based on the opposition. And that's fine if you are a very, very good football team. But because we're not quite there yet, it needs to be reined in a little bit. That's how I feel. It just needs to be reined in. And I also feel like Maresca spoke about how we're good defensively. We don't press, but we defend in a way that we set traps and we wait for teams to get into areas where we want to pounce, etc. I feel like we need to be more aggressive. We need to press a bit more. We need to go hunting for teams. Because what I feel like is happening as well is that because the build-up's slow, the press is a bit slow. We don't engage quick enough. We don't hunt teams down. And I think that's something that we've really got to do a bit better now. We've got to put pressure on teams, bring the intensity up slightly more. And I think that will help as well. I don't think we are a bad team. We are not a bad team. We are a good team with good players, with a very good manager that are going through a real tough patch. And personally, for me, when I get annoyed and I'm angry on a match reaction, and sometimes I'm getting a bit of stick for overreacting or however you want to say it, because that's what gets thrown at me, that I'm overreacting and I should remember what Emery's done for Villa. That's fine, but that context shouldn't be needed during a season. You can evaluate a season once it's finished. But while we're still playing games and while we're making mistakes and while we're playing poorly, we can strive for better. We can strive to improve. We don't need to keep saying, yeah, but we got Champions League last year. But that's not going to change anything now. The season's not over yet. We can't just give up. We've got to solve this problem and try and get some form of European football this season. Because the way that we're playing at the minute is a stark contrast of anything that we've seen under Unai Emery. So questions have to be asked slightly. You can question Emery and his decisions. We don't have to just back him so heartedly through everything just because he's a really good manager. If you think he's making mistakes, then you can question the mistakes. You can question some of the decisions. But just because you're doing that doesn't mean you don't back Emery. Unai Emery is the best manager I've ever seen at Aston Villa. I think he's an incredible manager. But I think we can get better. And I think we can improve. And I think we need to improve. So I feel like I'm very fair with Villa. It takes a lot for me to get really annoyed. And sometimes when I do a couple, like I reckon I've done 2 this year. I've done this one and I've done Crystal Palace, where I've been really annoyed. And I get told I'm going over the top. I don't think so. So I'm just being honest, but I will always strive to find a better solution, which is what I've tried to do on this mini episode today, is find a way for us to play better and improve. So those are my honest thoughts on a solution of what I think could happen. Because it's okay saying this player needs dropping, this player's not playing well, he needs to come out of the team. But I don't think we have a vast amount of players to be able to take certain players out of the team at the minute. Like if we take Rodgers out of the team, who takes Rodgers' position? Who in the squad is going to take Rodgers' position? I don't see anyone. You can maybe rotate Duran in there, but I think Rodgers is a player that has got to play through this. He's got to be better. And I think a subtle tweak by moving him to that left-hand side more will help him a little bit as well. I think because when he gets the ball, he's isolated. There's 2-3 players around him every time he touches the ball now. So he needs to be able to drift and find more space. So if he starts far left, he's got the ability to come inside a little bit. He's got that decision that he can come in or he can go down there. And I think that's just something that I think can work on. Honestly, I think the double pivot needs to be Kamara and Onana. I think that is the most solid option that we've got through there. I think a back three of Pau, Carlos and Konsa is a defensive three. I know a lot of people don't like to see Konsa at right back, but I don't want Konsa going past the halfway line. He doesn't need to go in front past the halfway line. That's not his position to go in front of the halfway line. His position is to stay around that zone there. This player offers the width. This player can move around. He can drop around through here. Everybody can shuffle around a little bit. And I just think that's the only viable solution that I have to how we can change things. I don't see him going to he's played a 4-3-3 at PSG, but that's when he had the best team in the league. I don't see Emery deviating away too much from his current formation because he's got all of the patterns that he builds up with. He's got Pau Torres' role in the team. You know, we've built with this left back going forward. It's not going to be a 4-3-3. It's not going to be any other mad, quirky formation. It's going to have to be a subtle variation of what we're currently doing. So let me know what your thoughts are on my little option. Comment your thoughts on what you think needs to happen, personnel, etc. And just how are you feeling? Like how do we get around this? Are you worried? Are you not worried? So what we'll do tomorrow is we'll have the Brentford preview. Didn't really think it was right doing the preview today because we need to find some solutions. So Villa fans, let me know your thoughts. Up the Villa.